A werewolf shifter romance written by Catherine Stewart. Prologue. Elara, a forgotten Omega in Northwood Pack's shadows, yearned for an impossible connection. Her isolated past taught her to dim her desires. Alpha Kaelen, a storm of raw power, barely saw her. Yet, her gaze often found his. She was meant to be unseen. Safe. But a primal instinct stirred beneath Kaelen's alpha pride, a subtle awareness of her scent, a buried recognition. A dangerous seed, about to be watered by a chance encounter. A single glance can shatter indifference. An unexpected awareness can bloom. And the forgotten might find themselves dangerously seen. The polished stone floors of the Shadowclaw Alpha's residence gleamed under Elara's diligent ministrations, reflecting the opulent tapestries that adorned the walls. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that streamed through the arched windows, illuminating the quiet dedication with which she performed her duties. As an Omega within the Shadowclaw Pack, Elara's days were a carefully orchestrated routine of service, her presence a silent hum that ensured the smooth running of the Alpha's household. It was a life she navigated with a quiet grace, her own needs and desires often relegated to the shadowed corners of her heart. But beneath the practiced serenity of Elara's demeanor stirred a longing as deep and persistent as the ancient forests that surrounded the Shadowclaw territory. It wasn't a yearning for the power wielded by the Alphas, nor the acknowledged comfort afforded to the Betas. Elara's quiet ache was for something far more intimate, to be truly seen, to have the quiet worth she offered acknowledged by a gaze that held genuine recognition, a touch that conveyed more than mere expectation. Later that morning, while meticulously polishing a silver-framed portrait in the Alpha's private study, Elara's movements stilled as a familiar, commanding presence filled the doorway. Alpha Kaelen. His very presence seemed to thicken the air, a silent assertion of dominance that resonated even in his quietest moments. His gaze, sharp and intense, the color of a stormy twilight, swept across the room, pausing briefly on Elara. It wasn't a look of true recognition, not in the way he acknowledged his warriors or his advisors. It was more of a fleeting assessment, a detached observation of the Omega diligently performing her task. A faint furrow creased his brow, a subtle hint of something unreadable, perhaps a fleeting acknowledgement of her quiet efficiency, or perhaps merely an unconscious registration of her presence within his personal space. The brief encounter sent a familiar tremor through Elara, a mixture of nervous awareness and a quiet resignation to her unnoticed existence. Kaelen moved further into the study, his attention already focused on the documents spread across his massive desk. He exuded an aura of power, a tangible weight of responsibility that settled upon his broad shoulders. Elara resumed her polishing, her movements deliberately quiet, striving to become as unobtrusive as possible, a skill honed over years of navigating the Alpha's often unpredictable moods. Later, while tending the meticulously cultivated gardens within the palace grounds, Elara found a moment of quiet solace. The vibrant colors of the blooming moonpetal and sunburst lilies offered a temporary respite from the often austere atmosphere of the Alpha's residence. Lyra, her unwavering friend and fellow Omega, joined her, her gentle eyes reflecting a familiar understanding. "You carry a heavier air today, Elara," Lyra murmured, her voice soft as the rustling leaves. "Is all well?" Elara carefully pruned a wilting blossom, her gaze fixed on the delicate petals. "The Alpha, he was in the study this morning." Lyra's brow furrowed slightly. "And that troubles you?" Elara hesitated, her fingers tightening around the stem of the flower. He looked at me," Lyra truly looked. It was unsettling. Lyra's gaze softened with empathy. "Kaelen, he carries the weight of the pack, Elara. His gaze often holds a intensity. Elara nodded slowly, understanding Lyra's gentle attempt to rationalize the Alpha's behavior. But there was something else, a flicker, almost of disdain? The word hung in the air between them, a quiet acknowledgement of the unspoken hierarchy that governed their lives. Lyra's hand rested gently on Elara's arm. Kaelen, he adheres strictly to the traditions, Elara. The lines of status within the Shadowclaw Pack are deeply etched. Her words carried a gentle caution, a reminder of the unbreachable gulf that separated an Alpha of his standing from a Pallas Omega. A faint sigh escaped Elara's lips. I know, Lyra. It is foolish of me to even notice. A wave of familiar lowliness washed over her, the ingrained understanding of her place in the pack hierarchy a constant weight on her spirit. Lyra's grip tightened on Elara's arm. Your worth is not defined by the Alpha's gaze, Elara. Your quiet strength, your unwavering kindness, these are the true measures of your spirit. Her words were a comforting balm, a reminder of the inherent value that Elara often struggled to see in herself. That evening, as the Shadowclaw Pack gathered for the evening meal in the Grand Hall, the air buzzed with a subtle anticipation. The scent of roasted game mingled with the hushed conversations of the assembled wolves. Elara moved quietly amongst the tables, refilling water skins and clearing empty plates, her presence as unobtrusive as possible. Then, across the crowded hall, her gaze was drawn, almost against her will, to the head table. Alpha Kaelen sat there, his powerful presence commanding the attention of those around him. His sharp, intense gaze occasionally swept across the hall, and each time it did, Elara felt a familiar tremor of nervous awareness. Once, his eyes lingered on her for a fraction longer than necessary. It was in the look of desire, not in the way some of the younger unmated wolves would sometimes glance her way. It was more of a detached observation, a cool, almost clinical assessment that seemed to categorize her, to place her firmly within the established order of the pack. A faint, almost imperceptible frown creased his brow, as if a fleeting thought, something he couldn't quite place or perhaps dismissed as insignificant, had crossed his mind. Elara quickly busied herself with her tasks, the weight of his gaze leaving her feeling exposed and insignificant. The ingrained understanding of her low status within the pack settled upon her like a heavy cloak. An Alpha like Kaelen, powerful, respected, and burdened by the responsibility of leadership, would never truly see an Omega like her. The chasm of status was too vast, the traditions too deeply entrenched. The fleeting moments of his attention were likely nothing more than a momentary registration of the help within his own household, nothing more. The thought, though familiar, carried a quiet sting. The memory of Alpha Kaelen's intense, assessing gaze lingered like a phantom touch on Elara's skin long after the evening meal had concluded. It was a look that held no warmth, no flicker of genuine interest, only a cool, almost detached observation that underscored the vast chasm separating their places within the Shadowclaw Pack. A sigh, barely audible, escaped Elara's lips as she quietly stacked the remaining dishes, the clinking of ceramic against ceramic a stark counterpoint to the turbulent stirrings within her. Later, seeking the quiet solace of the palace gardens under the watchful gaze of the moon, Elara found Lyra waiting for her near the whispering fountain. The silver light bathed the delicate blossoms in an ethereal glow, their fragrant perfume a temporary balm to Elara's troubled thoughts. You seem preoccupied, Elara, Lyra murmured, her voice soft as the rustling leaves. Her gentle eyes held a knowing concern. Elara hesitated, her gaze fixed on the shimmering water of the fountain. It is nothing, Lyra. Just the lingering awareness of the Alpha's gaze. Lyra's brow furrowed slightly. He looked at you again? Elara nodded slowly, a faint blush rising in her cheeks. Briefly. But it felt different tonight. Almost curious? The question hung in the air between them, a fragile tendril of hope daring to unfurl despite Elara's ingrained skepticism. Lyra's hand found Elara's, her touch a comforting anchor. Kaelen, he is a complex soul, Elara. Burdened by his responsibilities, perhaps his gaze holds more than mere assessment. Elara shook her head gently, a wry smile touching her lips. You are too kind, Lyra. An alpha of his stature, his gaze likely holds no more meaning for a Pallas Omega than the arrangement of these very stones. She gestured to the meticulously placed rocks around the fountain. We are simply part of the backdrop. But even as she spoke the words, a tiny seed of doubt lingered. The intensity of Kaelen's gaze, however fleeting, had held a certain weight. A sharpness that felt almost like recognition, though her logical mind quickly dismissed such a fanciful notion. The following morning, while tending to the Alpha's private chambers, Elara's quiet routine was unexpectedly disrupted. Kaelen entered the room, his movements carrying their usual air of quiet command. Elara's heart gave a nervous flutter, and she quickly lowered her gaze, feigning absorption in straightening the intricately woven rug. Elara, his voice, deep and resonant, cut through the quiet. Elara's breath hitched. She slowly raised her head, her eyes meeting his with a hesitant trepidation. His gaze, as always, was intense, but today there was a subtle difference, a flicker of something that Elara couldn't quite decipher. The reports from the border patrols, Kaelen began, his tone formal, his gaze unwavering. Ensure they are compiled and on my desk before midday. Yes, Alpha, Elara murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. But then, he hesitated, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer. Anne. Elara, he continued, his tone softening almost imperceptibly. The moon petal tea, prepare it as you usually do. It aids focus. A faint blush warmed Elara's cheeks. It was a small request, a routine task, yet the slight shift in his tone, the almost personal nature of the request, sent a confusing flutter through her. It was the first time he had addressed her directly with such a specific instruction. Later that day, while meticulously preparing the moonpetal tea, its delicate fragrance filling the air, Elara's thoughts drifted back to the Alpha's unusual request. Could it be a simple acknowledgement of her skill? Or was there something more beneath the surface of his formal demeanor? The question, fragile as a butterfly's wing, fluttered in her heart. That evening, as Elara carried the steaming cup of tea to Kaelen's study, her steps were lighter than usual, a faint, almost imperceptible hope stirring within her. She placed the cup silently on his desk, her gaze lowered in deference. Kaelen looked up, his intense blue eyes meeting hers. This time, there was a subtle shift in his expression, a flicker of something that might have been appreciation. Thank you, Elara, he murmured, his voice a low rumble. Their gazes held for a fleeting moment longer than necessary. In that brief, suspended space, Elara felt a strange, almost magnetic pull, a connection that defied the rigid boundaries of their status. Her heart gave a soft, almost hesitant leap. But then, just as quickly, the moment was broken. Kaelen's gaze shifted back to the documents on his desk, his formal demeanor returning like a familiar cloak. You may go, Elara. The dismissal, though expected, carried a faint sting. The fragile tendril of hope that had dared to unfurl within her retreated, wounded but not entirely extinguished. The following day, a visiting pack arrived at the Shadowclaw territory, the Silverstream wolves, known for their amiable nature and their skilled healers. Among them was a young Omega named Rhys. His eyes, the warm color of amber, held a gentle kindness, and his demeanor was open and engaging. During the welcoming feast, Rhys found himself seated near Elara. He spoke to her with a genuine interest, his questions thoughtful, his laughter warm. For the first time since she couldn't remember when, Elara felt truly seen, her quiet observations met with genuine curiosity and appreciation. There was an easy camaraderie between them, a shared understanding of the often understated strengths of Omega life. A sense of belonging, fragile but real, began to blossom within her. They spoke for hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly from the healing properties of local herbs to the subtle nuances of pack dynamics. Rhys's gaze held a warmth that was entirely different from Kaelen's sharp intensity. It was a gentle warmth, a comforting light that chased away some of the shadows that often clung to Elara's heart. A quiet connection began to form, a sense of shared understanding that felt safe. Unbeknownst to Elara, across the bustling feast hall, Alpha Kaelen's gaze flickered towards her and Rhys. A muscle tightened in his jaw, his intense blue eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something unreadable, something that felt akin to a possessive awareness. Crossing his features before he turned his attention back to the Silverstream Alpha. The seed of an unexpected awareness had begun to sprout, its tendrils reaching into the quiet life of the forgotten Omega. The easy camaraderie Elara found in Rhys's company was a balm to the often unacknowledged loneliness that had been her constant companion. His gentle inquiries about her life within the Shadowclaw Pack, his genuine interest in her quiet observations, created a space where Elara felt truly seen, not as a mere functionary within the Alpha's household, but as an individual with thoughts and feelings that held value. Their conversations, often held in hushed tones amidst the bustling activity of the visiting packs, wove a delicate thread of connection between them, a shared understanding that felt both comforting and new. "The Shadowclaw Gardens are remarkable," Elara, Rhys commented one afternoon, as they strolled amongst the vibrant moonpetal and sunburst lilies. His amber eyes held a genuine appreciation for the carefully cultivated beauty. "You have a true gift with them." A faint blush warmed Elara's cheeks. "They offer a quiet solace," she replied softly, her fingers gently tracing the velvety petal of a deep violet bloom. "A place where the world outside fades a little." Rhys's gaze softened, a warm understanding in their depths. "I understand that feeling. Sometimes, the quiet spaces are where the loudest truths reside." Their conversations continued late into the evenings, often stretching long after the boisterous laughter of the alphas and betas had subsided. They spoke of their respective packs, their traditions, their hopes for the future. With Rhys, Elara found a freedom of expression she had rarely experienced before. His gentle encouragement drew out her quiet thoughts, her insightful observations about the subtle currents of pack dynamics, her deep connection to the natural world. He listened with an attentiveness that made her feel significant. One evening, as they sat beneath the silvery glow of the moon, the air filled with the fragrant perfume of night-blooming jasmine, Rhys's gaze held a new intensity. "Elara," he began, his voice a soft murmur that seemed to blend with the gentle rustling of leaves. "I find myself drawn to your quiet strength, your gentle spirit." A nervous flutter stirred within Elara's chest. His words, though softly spoken, carried a weight of something she hadn't anticipated. She looked up at him, her own gaze questioning. Rhys reached for her hand, his touch warm and surprisingly firm. "In my pack, Omegas are valued for their nurturing hearts, their insightful wisdom." I sense that same depth within you, Elara. A depth that resonates with mine. A warmth spread through Elara, a feeling she hadn't experienced in, well, ever. His words were a balm to the ingrained sense of loneliness that often shadowed her thoughts. To be valued, truly valued, for who she was, it was a concept both exhilarating and terrifying. As their connection deepened, Elara found herself looking forward to their shared moments with a growing anticipation. Rhys's presence was a comforting anchor, his gentle humor a light that chased away some of the shadows that often clung to her heart. He made her feel seen. Unbeknownst to Elara, however, this burgeoning connection did not go unnoticed. Alpha Kaelen, his movements carrying their usual air of quiet command, often found his gaze inadvertently drawn to the quiet Omega and the visiting male. There was something in the easy camaraderie between them, the soft smiles they exchanged, the shared moments of quiet understanding, that stirred a disquiet within him. He couldn't quite place the feeling. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was more of a possessive awareness. An almost instinctive sense that something within his territory, something that had always been a quiet fixture in the background, was now engaging with an outsider in a way that felt unexpected. One afternoon, Kaelen found himself in the palace gardens, the vibrant colors of the moon petal and sunburst lilies a stark contrast to the subtle frown that creased his brow. He observed Elara and Rhys from a distance, their heads bent in quiet conversation near the whispering fountain. A muscle tightened in his jaw, his intense blue eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something unreadable, something that felt akin to a territorial awareness, crossing his features. Later that evening, Kaelen summoned Elara to his study. The request, delivered through a curt message carried by a beta, held a formal weight that made Elara's heart beat a little faster. She entered the study with a hesitant trepidation, her gaze lowered in deference. Elara, Kaelen's voice, deep and resonant, cut through the quiet of the room. He stood by the large window, his powerful frame silhouetted against the twilight sky. Alpha, Elara murmured, her hands clasped tightly before her. Kaelen turned, his intense blue eyes fixed on her. Your duties, they seem to have lessened of late. His tone was neutral, yet there was an undercurrent of something else. Elara's brow furrowed slightly in confusion. I have continued to fulfill all assigned tasks, Alpha. Indeed, Kaelen replied, his gaze unwavering. But I have observed a certain preoccupation. A focus elsewhere. A faint blush warmed Elara's cheeks. She understood the unspoken implication. My interactions with Rhys have been polite, Alpha. As befits a guest. Kaelen's gaze sharpened. Politeness is expected. But excessive fraternization can disrupt the harmony of the pack. Elara's heart sank. Was he forbidding her from speaking with Rhys? The thought sent a sharp pang of disappointment through her. I meant no disruption, Alpha. See that it remains so, Elara, Kaelen stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. Your primary allegiance is to the Shadowclaw Pack. Your focus should remain within these borders. The dismissal, when it came, felt like a cold dismissal of the fragile connection she had begun to forge with Rhys. A heavy weight settled in Elara's chest. The Alpha's words, though veiled in concern for pack harmony, carried a distinct undercurrent of something she couldn't quite decipher, but it felt undeniably possessive. Despite Kaelen's thinly veiled warning, Elara found herself drawn to Rhys's gentle company whenever their paths crossed. His presence was a comforting reassurance in the increasingly unsettling atmosphere within the Shadowclaw territory. He spoke of his pack with a quiet affection, describing the close-knit community and the respect afforded to all members, regardless of their status. His words painted a picture of a life where Omegas were valued for their inherent worth, a stark contrast to the often unspoken hierarchy within the Shadowclaw Pack. In Silverstream, Rhys explained one evening, as they sat by the softly murmuring stream that bordered the Shadowclaw lands, our Omegas hold positions of great respect. Their insights are valued in council, their nurturing nature strengthens the bonds of our community. Elara listened, a quiet longing stirring within her. A pack where she could be more than just a silent servant, the thought was both intoxicating and impossibly distant. Rhys turned to her, his amber eyes filled with a gentle sincerity. "Elara," he began, his voice soft. "I find myself increasingly drawn to you. Your quiet strength, your insightful mind, they are qualities I deeply admire." A warmth spread through Elara, chasing away some of the lingering chill from Kaelen's earlier words. Rhys's gaze held a genuine affection, a warmth that resonated deep within her. "Rhys," she murmured, her own gaze meeting his. "Your kindness, it has been a light in a, sometimes shadowed world." He reached for her hand, his touch sending a gentle tremor through her. Perhaps that light can shine brighter, Elara. Perhaps we could explore a different path." A fragile hope blossomed in Elara's heart. A path away from the quiet anonymity of the Shadowclaw Palace, a path towards a place where she might be truly valued, truly seen. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Unbeknownst to Elara, however, her growing closeness with Rhys had not escaped Alpha Kaelen's notice. His observations had become more frequent, his intense gaze often lingering on their interactions with a sharp, almost possessive scrutiny. The unreadable emotion that had flickered in his eyes before now seemed to carry a distinct undercurrent of something akin to displeasure, a territorial awareness that was beginning to stir a primal unease within him. He couldn't quite articulate the feeling, this unexpected resistance to the Omega's burgeoning connection with an outsider. It was illogical, irrational, yet it persisted, a low hum of discontent beneath the surface of his alpha control. The fragile hope that had begun to bloom in Elara's heart under Rhys's gentle attention was a delicate thing, easily threatened by the subtle but persistent awareness of Alpha Kaelen's watchful gaze. His presence, though often distant, carried a weight of authority that seemed to press down on the burgeoning connection between Elara and the visiting Omega. There was an unreadable intensity in his blue eyes whenever they flickered towards her and Rhys, a silent scrutiny that made Elara's newfound ease feel precarious, as if it could shatter at any moment. One crisp morning, Rhys approached Elara as she tended the dew-kissed roses in the palace gardens. His amber eyes held a warmth that always managed to chase away some of the shadows that lingered in her heart. "Elara," he murmured, his voice soft as the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves. "I have been speaking with the Silverstream Alpha. He has extended an invitation for you to visit our pack." A surprised flutter stirred within Elara's chest. The thought of leaving the familiar, albeit often restrictive, confines of the Shadowclaw territory was both exhilarating and daunting. "Visit?" she echoed softly, her fingers pausing on the velvety petals of a crimson rose. Rhys's smile was warm and encouraging. "He has heard of your insightful connection to the natural world, your gift with herbs. He believes you could bring a unique perspective to our healing practices." A sense of disbelief washed over Elara. To be valued for her skills, to be invited not as a servant but as someone with something to offer, it was a concept that felt almost foreign. He truly said that? Truly, Rhys affirmed, his gaze holding a genuine admiration. "Elara, in Silverstream, your quiet strengths would be celebrated." A longing, sharp and sweet, pierced through Elara's carefully guarded heart. The image of a life where she could be more than just a shadow, where her inherent worth would be acknowledged, was a powerful lure. What would Kaelen say? She asked, the ingrained awareness of the Alpha's authority a familiar constraint. Rhys's expression softened with understanding. We would, of course, seek his permission. But Elara, I believe this could be a chance for you, for us. His gaze held a deeper meaning, a silent promise of a shared future. Before Elara could fully process the implications of Rhys's words, a familiar voice, laced with an unmistakable note of command, cut through the quiet morning air. Elara. Alpha Kaelen stood at the edge of the gardens, his powerful frame radiating an aura of quiet authority. His intense blue eyes were fixed on Elara, his expression unreadable. Elara's heart gave a nervous leap. She straightened, her gaze lowered in deference. Alpha. Kaelen's gaze flickered briefly to Rhys, a cool, assessing look that held a hint of something possessive. Elara, I require your assistance in the library. Immediately. His tone brooked no argument. A wave of disappointment washed over Elara. The fragile hope that Rhys had ignited seemed to flicker under the weight of the Alpha's command. Of course, Alpha, she murmured, her gaze downcast. Rhys's hand briefly covered hers, a silent offering of support. We will speak of this later, Elara, he whispered, his amber eyes filled with a reassuring warmth. As Elara followed Kaelen towards the imposing stone structure of the library, a sense of unease settled within her. The Alpha's abrupt summons, the intensity of his gaze, it felt like a deliberate interruption. Inside the dimly lit library, surrounded by towering shelves filled with ancient scrolls and leather-bound books, Kaelen turned to face Elara, his expression still unreadable. The Silverstream Alpha has extended an unusual invitation, he stated, his voice a low rumble that echoed in the quiet space. Elara's heart pounded against her ribs. He knew. Rhys, he spoke of a visit, she confirmed softly, her gaze lowered. Kaelen's gaze sharpened. And this visit holds significance for you? There was an undercurrent in his tone, a subtle sharpness that made Elara's apprehension grow. Elara hesitated, torn between the longing for a different life and the ingrained obedience to her Alpha. Rhys, he values the skills of Omegas in his pack, Alpha. He believes I could contribute. A muscle twitched in Kaelen's jaw. Your contributions are within the Shadowclaw territory, Elara. Your allegiance lies here. His words were a clear, unambiguous assertion of his authority. The weight of his words settled heavily on Elara's heart. The fragile hope of a different future seemed to crumble before the unyielding reality of her present. Yes, Alpha, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. But then, Kaelen's gaze softened, a flicker of something unexpected crossing his intense blue eyes. However, he continued, his tone shifting almost imperceptibly. I understand the desire for connection. Perhaps a brief visit, under appropriate supervision, could be arranged. Elara's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise. Alpha? Kaelen's gaze remained fixed on her, a strange intensity in their depths. The Shadowclaw Pack values diplomacy. Maintaining good relations with our neighbors is paramount. His explanation felt formal, almost forced. Despite the unexpected concession, a seed of unease began to take root in Elara's heart. The Alpha's sudden shift, the almost reluctant agreement, it felt calculated. The visit to the Silverstream Pack was arranged, a small delegation of Shadowclaw wolves accompanying Elara and Rhys. The journey was filled with a mixture of anticipation and a subtle undercurrent of tension. Kaelen's watchful gaze, though often directed elsewhere, seemed to linger on Elara and Rhys whenever they interacted. The Silverstream territory was everything Rhys had described, a place where Omegas held positions of respect, their voices valued in council, their nurturing nature celebrated. Elara felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. Rhys's pack welcomed her with a genuine warmth, their amber eyes reflecting a sincere appreciation for her quiet insights and her gentle spirit. One evening, as Elara and Rhys sat by a softly glowing fire pit within the Silverstream settlement, surrounded by the comforting murmur of the pack, Rhys's gaze held a depth of emotion that made Elara's heart flutter. "Elara," he began, his voice low and sincere. "Being here, seeing you embraced for who you truly are, it only strengthens what I feel for you." He reached for her hand, his touch sending a familiar warmth through her. "I want you to stay, Elara. To build a life with me here, in Silverstream, where your worth will never be questioned." A wave of emotion washed over Elara, gratitude, longing, a fragile hope for a future where she could finally be free to be herself. "Rhys," she murmured, her gaze meeting his. "Your kindness, it means more to me than words can say." But before she could voice the yearning in her heart, a hushed conversation drifted towards them from a nearby group of Silverstream Omegas. Elara's ears, acutely attuned to subtle sounds, picked up fragments of their words. "Her lineage, it is undeniable. The Shadowclaw Alpha, he must know. The power, it would elevate any who bonded with her." Elara's blood ran cold. Power? Lineage? What were they talking about? Driven by a sudden, chilling premonition, Elara subtly shifted closer, straining to hear the rest of their hushed exchange. "Rhys, he is aware?" "Of course. It was arranged." "Arranged?" A cold dread washed over Elara. "Arranged how?" Then, one of the Omegas spoke a name that sent a shard of ice through Elara's heart. His standing, it has always been, precarious. Bonding with one of her bloodline. Her bloodline? What secret lay hidden within her forgotten past? And what did it have to do with Rhys's sudden, intense interest in her? A terrifying realization began to dawn, a chilling suspicion that shattered the fragile warmth of their connection. The welcoming glow of the Silverstream fire suddenly felt cold, the comforting murmur of the pack now laced with a sinister undertone. The possibility of a different future, a future built on genuine affection, seemed to crumble into dust before the weight of this terrifying, unspoken truth. The gentle light of belonging had been abruptly extinguished, leaving Elara standing in a chilling darkness of doubt and a dawning sense of profound betrayal. The hushed whispers of the Silverstream Omegas, fragments of conversations that spoke of hidden lineage and calculated arrangements, hung in the air around Elara like a suffocating shroud. The warmth she had felt in Rhys's presence, the fragile hope of a genuine connection, now felt tainted, overshadowed by a chilling suspicion that burrowed deep into her heart. Power? Her bloodline? What secrets lay buried beneath the surface of her forgotten past, secrets that could explain Rhys's sudden, intense interest, secrets that hinted at a connection built not on affection, but on something far more calculating? The welcoming glow of the Silverstream fire pit seemed to dim, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with her growing unease. The comforting murmur of the pack now sounded like a chorus of veiled intentions. Elara's gaze flickered towards Rhys, his amber eyes still holding that familiar warmth, but now she saw a flicker beneath the surface, a carefully guarded awareness that hadn't been there before. Was it guilt? Or simply the guardedness of someone whose true motives lay hidden? Driven by a sudden, desperate need for clarity, Elara gently disengaged her hand from Rhys's. "Rhys," she began, her voice barely a whisper, betraying the turmoil within. "Those omegas, they were speaking of lineage. Of power." Rhys's smile faltered, a shadow crossing his usually open features. They speak of many things, Elara. Old tales, pack histories." His attempt at dismissal felt too swift, too practiced. Elara's heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dawning realization. "But they mentioned my lineage. And arrangement." Her gaze searched his, pleading for honesty. "Rhys, what did they mean?" Rhys's gaze shifted away, a telltale sign that sent a cold wave of dread washing over Elara. He hesitated, his usual fluency deserting him. "Elara, there are complexities within pack dynamics. Sometimes alliances are beneficial." Beneficial? The word hung in the air, stripped of its neutrality, revealing a chilling undercurrent of calculation. Beneficial for whom, Rhys? Elara pressed, her voice trembling slightly. For the Silverstream pack? Or for you? Rhys finally met her gaze, his amber eyes now clouded with a mixture of apprehension and a carefully constructed sincerity. For both, Elara. A joining of our unique strengths could bring great things. Unique strengths? The pieces began to fall into place, forming a terrifying picture. Her forgotten status within the Shadowclaw Pack, could it be a deliberate concealment of something more? And Rhys, his sudden, intense interest, had it been genuine affection, or a calculated move to exploit a hidden power? My bloodline holds something special? Elara whispered, the realization dawning with a sickening certainty. Rhys reached for her hand again, his touch now feeling cold, manipulative. Elara, it is not exploitation. It is recognizing potential. Acknowledging a destiny. Destiny? The word tasted like ash in Elara's mouth. A destiny orchestrated not by connection, but by a thirst for power. The warmth she had felt in Rhys's gaze now felt like a carefully crafted illusion, a means to an end. Tears welled in Elara's eyes, the pain of betrayal a sharp, agonizing twist in her heart. I thought you saw me, Rhys. For who I truly am." Rhys's expression softened, a practiced remorse in his amber eyes. "I do, Elara. And this potential, it is a part of who you are. A powerful part." But his words rang hollow, devoid of the genuine warmth she had once believed in. The fragile hope she had nurtured had been brutally extinguished, leaving behind a bitter residue of disillusionment. Without another word, Elara turned and fled, the comforting murmur of the Silverstream pack now sounding like a mocking echo of her shattered illusions. She ran blindly through the moonlit forest, the tears streaming down her face mingling with the cool night air. The pain of Rhys's betrayal was a raw, open wound, a stark reminder of her vulnerability, her naivety in believing she could finally find a place where she truly belonged. The journey back to the Shadowclaw territory was a blur of pain and exhaustion. The faces of the welcoming Silverstream wolves now seemed like masks, their kindness a carefully constructed facade. The image of Rhys's warm smile was now tainted by the chilling realization of his potential ulterior motives. When Elara finally stumbled back into the familiar, albeit often restrictive, confines of the Shadowclaw Palace, she felt a profound sense of emptiness. The longing for connection that had driven her towards Rhys now felt like a cruel jest. Trust, once a fragile seedling, had been brutally uprooted. Lyra found her later, huddled in the quiet solitude of the palace gardens, her face pale and her eyes filled with a deep, unshed sorrow. Lyra's gentle embrace was a silent offering of comfort, a familiar anchor in Elara's storm-tossed world. "Elara, what happened?" Lyra's voice was soft with concern. Tears finally spilled down Elara's cheeks as she recounted the hushed whispers, the chilling implications of Rhys's words, the devastating realization of his potential betrayal. Lyra listened with a quiet empathy, her own gentle heart aching for her friend's pain. "Oh, Elara," Lyra murmured, her arms tightening around her. He sought to use you?" Elara nodded, the shame of her own naivety a bitter taste in her mouth. My bloodline, it holds some power. Something I never knew." Lyra's gaze held a fierce protectiveness. Then his affection, it was not genuine? The question hung in the air, the silence a heavy confirmation of Elara's shattered illusions. The fragile hope of a different future had been a cruel mirage. Unbeknownst to Elara, as she wrestled with the pain of her betrayal, Alpha Kaelen's watchful gaze had followed her return. He had sensed the shift in her demeanor during the latter part of the visit to the Silverstream Pack, the subtle withdrawal, the almost palpable sadness that now clung to her like a shroud. His initial unease at her connection with Rhys had now morphed into a different kind of awareness, a silent observation of her evident distress. He found her in the gardens, the moonlight casting long, sorrowful shadows around her huddled form. He approached slowly, his powerful presence surprisingly quiet. "Elara," his voice, deep and resonant, broke the stillness of the night. Elara startled, her head snapping up, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and lingering pain. Kaelen's intense blue eyes held a gaze that was different. Gone was the detached assessment, the subtle displeasure. In its place was something softer. An unreadable intensity that seemed to hold a flicker of concern. "Alpha," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly. Kaelen hesitated, a rare moment of uncertainty in his commanding presence. You returned, sooner than expected." Elara's gaze flickered away, the memory of Rhys's betrayal a fresh wound. The visit concluded," she replied softly, unwilling to meet his intense gaze. But Kaelen's gaze remained fixed on her, his blue eyes searching, probing. "Something troubled you there." It wasn't a question, but a statement, a quiet observation that resonated with an unexpected depth. Tears welled in Elara's eyes once more, the raw pain of her recent discovery too overwhelming to contain. A choked sob escaped her lips. Kaelen's expression shifted, a subtle softening around his sharp features. He took a step closer, a hesitant movement that spoke of an unfamiliar impulse. "Elara," he began again, his voice a low rumble, the usual command replaced by a note of something gentler. In that moment, standing beneath the silent gaze of the moon, the Alpha of the Shadowclaw Pack saw not just a Palace Omega, a quiet fixture in his household. He saw a woman wounded, vulnerable, her quiet strength seemingly shattered. And for the first time, a flicker of something beyond mere awareness stirred within him. A primal instinct to protect? An unexpected stirring of something akin to empathy? The carefully constructed walls of his Alpha Reserve seemed to crack ever so slightly, revealing a glimpse of something deeper, something that even he didn't yet fully understand. The game had changed. The forgotten Omega was no longer invisible. And the Alpha was finally beginning to truly see her. The raw anguish etched on Elara's face beneath the silent scrutiny of the moon seemed to pierce through the carefully constructed walls of Alpha Kaelen's reserve. The choked sob that escaped her lips resonated in the stillness of the night, a stark testament to a pain that went beyond mere disappointment. For the first time, he saw not just a quiet Omega, a fleeting presence within his household, but a woman wounded, her vulnerability laid bare in the silvery moonlight. An unfamiliar stirring, a primal instinct to offer solace, to shield her from the source of her distress, rose within him, a stark contrast to the detached observations that had characterized their previous interactions. "Elara," he murmured again, his voice a low rumble that held a surprising note of gentleness. He took another step closer, closing the distance between them, his powerful presence now radiating a subtle aura of protectiveness rather than command. What troubles you?" Elara hesitated, her gaze still downcast, the shame of her naivety warring with the overwhelming pain of Rhys's betrayal. He was not genuine, Alpha," she finally whispered, the words catching in her throat. His interest, it was not in me, but in something else." Kaelen's brow furrowed, his intense blue eyes narrowing with a dawning understanding. "Something he hoped to gain?" Elara nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes once more. My bloodline, it holds some significance. A power I never knew. He sought to bond with me for that power." The confession was a raw, painful exhale, a stripping away of the last vestiges of her fragile hope. A low growl rumbled in Kaelen's chest, a sound that spoke of a burgeoning anger, a protective fury directed at the one who had dared to inflict such pain upon this quiet Omega within his own pack. "He sought to use you?" His voice, though still low, now held an edge of steel. Elara flinched at the intensity, but there was a strange comfort in his anger, a sense that her pain, for the first time, was being acknowledged, validated by someone who held power within her world. "Yes, Alpha." Kaelen's gaze softened again, a flicker of something akin to remorse. "And I saw only a simple connection. I did not see your distress." His words were a quiet admission, a rare glimpse behind the formidable walls of his Alpha reserve. Lyra, who had been watching from the shadows, her gentle heart aching for Elara, stepped forward, her gaze holding a quiet strength as she met Kaelen's. "Elara's heart is pure, Alpha. She sought only genuine connection." Kaelen's gaze shifted to Lyra, a flicker of understanding in his intense blue eyes. "I see that now, Lyra." He turned back to Elara, his expression now holding a depth of emotion that surprised even himself. "Elara, you have been wronged. And I failed to see it." The unexpected admission, the raw sincerity in his voice, sent a fresh wave of emotion through Elara. For so long, she had felt invisible, her pain unnoticed. Now, the powerful Alpha of her pack stood before her, acknowledging her hurt, his gaze holding a depth of concern she had never imagined possible. "Alpha," she whispered, her voice trembling. Kaelen took another step closer, his large hand reaching out, hovering hesitantly before gently cupping her cheek. His touch, though firm, held a surprising tenderness, a stark contrast to the detached interactions they had shared before. Elara's breath caught in her throat at the unexpected contact, the warmth of his hand seeping into her chilled skin. "Elara," he murmured, his thumb gently stroking her cheek. "You deserve far more than such deceit. You deserve genuine kindness. Genuine affection." His gaze searched hers, his intense blue eyes holding a depth of emotion that made her heart flutter with a confusing mix of vulnerability and a nascent, fragile hope. In that moment, something shifted between them. The rigid lines of Alpha and Omega, of master and servant, seemed to blur, replaced by a raw, undeniable connection forged in shared vulnerability and a dawning awareness. The forgotten Omega was finally seen. And the Alpha was finally allowing himself to truly look. The following days within the Shadowclaw territory held a different atmosphere. The visiting Silverstream pack departed with polite but subtly strained farewells. The undercurrent of unease that had permeated their interactions after Elara's discovery lingered in the air. Alpha Kaelen, however, seemed different. His gaze, when it fell upon Elara, no longer held that detached assessment. Instead, there was a quiet intensity, a lingering concern that made Elara's heart beat a little faster. He sought her out in the gardens, his powerful presence a stark contrast to the delicate blooms she tended. "Elara," he began, his voice a low rumble that seemed to carry a newfound gentleness. "Tell me of this power within your bloodline." Elara hesitated, the secret she had carried unknowingly now brought into the light. She spoke of the hushed whispers she had overheard, the implications of a lineage she had never known. Kaelen listened intently, his brow furrowed with a mixture of concern and a growing curiosity. "Such knowledge has been kept hidden within the Shadowclaw Pack," he murmured, his gaze thoughtful. "Why?" Elara shook her head, her own understanding as limited as his. I do not know, Alpha. My past, it is fragmented." Kaelen's gaze softened with a flicker of understanding. "Then we will uncover it together, Elara. This potential, it should not be a tool for manipulation, but a part of who you are, understood and respected." His words, spoken with a quiet sincerity, resonated deep within Elara. The alpha of her pack, the powerful leader who had once seemed so distant, was now offering her not just protection, but a path towards understanding herself. As they began to delve into the fragmented records and hushed histories of the Shadowclaw Pack, a different kind of connection began to form between them. Kaelen's interactions with Elara shifted, the formal distance replaced by a tentative curiosity, a shared purpose. He sought her opinions on matters beyond her usual duties, his gaze lingering on her with a newfound respect for her quiet insights. One evening, while poring over ancient scrolls in the dimly lit library, their hands brushed as they reached for the same brittle parchment. A jolt, unexpected and undeniable, shot through Elara, a spark of awareness that went beyond mere proximity. Kaelen's gaze met hers, his intense blue eyes holding a flicker of something more than respect. A warmth, a curiosity that mirrored her own burgeoning awareness of him, lingered in the air between them. "Elara," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate in the quiet space. "Your strength, it is not just in your quiet service. It is here." He gently touched her hand, his calloused fingers sending a shiver through her. The simple touch, the unexpected intimacy of his gaze, sent Elara's heart into a frantic rhythm. The rigid lines of their status seemed to waver, replaced by a fragile, burgeoning awareness of each other as individuals, as something more than just Alpha and Omega. Lyra watched their interactions with a quiet hope, her gentle eyes reflecting a silent understanding of the changing dynamic between her friend and the Alpha. She had always sensed a hidden strength within Elara, a quiet resilience that deserved to be seen. And now, it seemed, Kaelen was finally beginning to see it too. As the days turned into weeks, the connection between Kaelen and Elara deepened. Their shared exploration of her past, the quiet moments of understanding that passed between them, forged a bond that transcended the traditional boundaries of their pack. Kaelen's gaze, once detached, now held a warmth, a lingering intensity that made Elara's heart flutter with a confusing mix of trepidation and a burgeoning, undeniable attraction. One evening, beneath the silvery glow of the full moon, Kaelen found Elara in the gardens, the fragrant night-blooming jasmine filling the air. He approached her slowly, his powerful presence radiating a quiet intensity. "Elara," he began, his voice a low murmur that seemed to blend with the gentle rustling of leaves. He reached for her hand, his touch sending a familiar shiver through her. I find myself drawn to your strength, your quiet wisdom, your very spirit." Elara's breath caught in her throat, her gaze meeting his with a mixture of disbelief and a burgeoning hope. The powerful alpha of her pack, his words held a depth of emotion she had never dared to imagine. Kaelen's gaze deepened, his intense blue eyes holding a raw sincerity. "What that Silverstream Omega sought to exploit, I find myself drawn to with a genuine desire. Elara, I see you. Truly see you." His words, spoken with a quiet passion, resonated deep within Elara's heart, a balm to years of feeling invisible. A fragile, hesitant hope began to bloom within her, a whisper of a possibility she had never dared to dream. The forgotten Omega was finally being seen. And the Alpha was finally ready to truly look. The air in the moonlit garden thrummed with an unspoken energy, a palpable tension woven between the fragrant blossoms and the silent figures of Elara and Alpha Kaelen. His words, a low murmur that seemed to vibrate through the very leaves around them, hung in the stillness, each syllable a profound declaration that shattered the carefully constructed walls of their past interactions. "Elara, I see you. Truly see you." A wave of emotion, so intense it almost buckled her knees, washed over Elara. Years of feeling unseen, of existing in the periphery of the Shadowclaw Pack, seemed to recede, washed away by the raw sincerity in Kaelen's intense blue eyes. Her heart, which had long beat with a quiet, almost resigned rhythm, now hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of disbelief and a burgeoning, fragile hope. "Kaelen," she whispered, his name a breath on her lips, a sound that felt both foreign and intimately right. The powerful alpha of her pack, the man who had once seemed as distant as the stars, was looking at her with a depth of emotion that mirrored the secret yearning she had long held captive within her heart. He took another step closer, his large hands reaching out to gently frame her face. His touch, calloused yet surprisingly tender, sent a shiver of awareness through her. His gaze, unwavering and filled with a warmth that chased away the lingering shadows of Rhys's betrayal, held her captive. "Elara," he murmured, his thumbs softly stroking her cheeks. "Your quiet strength, it has always been there, a steady flame in the shadows. And I was too blind, too bound by the rigid traditions of our pack, to truly see its light." Tears welled in Elara's eyes, a mixture of relief, disbelief, and a profound sense of being finally acknowledged. You truly mean that, Kaelen?" A rare, gentle smile touched the corners of his lips, softening the sharp angles of his powerful face. "With every fiber of my being, Elara." His gaze deepened, the intensity now laced with a tenderness that made her heart ache with a longing she had never dared to voice. "You are more than just a part of the backdrop. You are the quiet strength that holds our pack together, the gentle heart that beats beneath the surface of our often harsh world." The air between them crackled with an unspoken desire, a magnetic pull that defied the established order of the Shadowclaw Pack. Elara's own yearning, long suppressed, now surged to the surface, a powerful tide threatening to overwhelm her carefully constructed composure. "Kaelen," she began again, her voice trembling, the unspoken emotions swirling within her. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Say my name, Elara," he murmured, his voice a low, husky invitation. "Kaelen," she whispered, the sound a soft caress in the stillness of the night. His gaze dropped to her lips, a flicker of raw desire in his intense blue eyes. "And what else do you desire, Elara?" His question was a soft provocation, a gentle urging to voice the long-held yearnings of her heart. Elara's own gaze was drawn to his lips, the unspoken promise of a connection that went beyond duty, beyond status, a siren's call that she could no longer resist. A tremor ran through her as she finally dared to voice the secret desires that had haunted her quiet moments. I desire to be seen, Kaelen. Truly seen. And, perhaps, to be desired. A low growl rumbled in Kaelen's chest, a sound that spoke of a primal longing mirroring her own. Desired, Elara? You have been desired without even knowing it. My wolf, it recognized your strength, your spirit, long before my conscious mind allowed it. I fought it, Elara, this undeniable pull. I told myself it was inappropriate. Beneath me. His confession was raw, honest, a stripping away of his alpha pride. But, Elara prompted softly, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. But, Kaelen continued, his gaze never leaving hers, my heart, my wolf, they know the truth. You are not beneath me, Elara. You are everything. His words, spoken with such profound sincerity, were like a balm to Elara's soul. Years of feeling insignificant, overlooked, melted away under the intensity of his gaze, the undeniable truth in his voice. He lowered his head, his lips brushing against hers, a feather-light touch that sent a jolt of pure sensation through her. Tell me, Elara, he murmured against her lips. Tell me what your heart truly desires. And in that moment, surrounded by the fragrant whispers of the moonlit garden, Elara finally allowed herself to voice the long-held yearnings of her soul. I desire you, Kaelen. A low groan escaped his lips as he finally closed the distance between them, his kiss a gentle exploration at first, a tentative merging of two souls who had long existed in separate worlds. But as their unspoken desires surged to the surface, the kiss deepened, becoming a passionate exploration of a connection that defied the rigid boundaries of their pack. Elara's arms, which had always moved with quiet servitude, now rose to twine around his neck, her fingers tangling in the thick strands of his dark hair. The longing that had simmered beneath the surface of her quiet existence now erupted, a wildfire of emotion that mirrored the raw intensity in Kaelen's embrace. The world around them seemed to fade away, the only reality the feel of his strong arms around her, the taste of him on her lips, the undeniable connection that pulsed between them like a living thing. It was a kiss that spoke of longing, of recognition, of a desire that had been silently growing in the shadows, now finally brought into the light. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, the air between them crackled with a tangible energy. Kaelen's intense blue eyes held a possessive fire, a stark contrast to the cool detachment he had once displayed. Elara, he murmured, his forehead resting against hers. This changes everything. A nervous flutter stirred within Elara's chest, a fragile awareness of the potential repercussions of their burgeoning connection. The pack, the traditions. Kaelen's grip tightened gently on her hands. The pack will see what I see, Elara. They will see your strength, your worth. And the traditions, some traditions are meant to be rewritten. His gaze held a fierce determination, a resolute promise to defy any obstacle that stood in the way of their connection. The following days were a whirlwind of unspoken tension and subtle shifts within the Shadowclaw Pack. Kaelen's interactions with Elara, though still carrying a degree of their established dynamic, now held a palpable undercurrent of something more. His gaze lingered on her with a possessive warmth, his voice softened whenever he addressed her, small gestures that did not go unnoticed by the keen eyes of the pack. Whispers followed Elara like shadows, the subtle shifts in the Alpha's behavior stirring a mixture of curiosity and unease amongst the pack members. Omegas exchanged worried glances, while Alphas and Betas watched with a cautious apprehension, the established order of their world seemingly on the verge of disruption. Lyra remained Elara's steadfast anchor, her gentle eyes filled with a quiet hope. "He sees you, Elara," she murmured one afternoon as they worked together in the gardens. "Truly sees you. I have waited a long time for this." Elara offered a hesitant smile. "It feels surreal, Lyra. As if I am living in a dream." "It is real, Elara," Lyra affirmed, her touch reassuring. "Embrace it." Kaelen, true to his word, began to subtly shift the dynamics within the pack. He sought Elara's counsel on matters that extended beyond her traditional duties, his voice respectful as he listened to her quiet insights. He began to publicly acknowledge her contributions, small gestures that chipped away at the ingrained hierarchy. One evening, during the pack gathering, Kaelen's gaze found Elara across the crowded clearing. He held her gaze for a long moment, a silent communication passing between them, a promise of a future where their connection would not be hidden. A ripple of surprise and speculation ran through the assembled wolves. The true test of their burgeoning connection came with the unexpected arrival of a delegation from a neighboring pack, the Ironclaw Wolves, known for their rigid adherence to tradition and their often unyielding views on pack hierarchy. Their alpha, a formidable male named Theron, held deeply ingrained beliefs about the roles of alphas and omegas. During the formal dinner, Theron's sharp gaze frequently lingered on Elara, his expression a mixture of disdain and disapproval at her quiet presence near Alpha Kaelen. His comments, though veiled in polite conversation, carried a subtle but unmistakable undertone of criticism regarding Kaelen's apparent regard for an omega. "Alpha Kaelen," Theron stated, his voice carrying a condescending edge. "Your household, it seems, unusually integrated." His gaze flickered towards Elara, a clear implication in his words. Kaelen's jaw tightened imperceptibly, his intense blue eyes meeting Theron's with a steely resolve. The strength of the Shadowclaw Pack lies in the unity of all its members, Alpha Theron. Each individual, regardless of their designation, contributes to our whole. His tone was polite but firm, a clear defense of Elara's worth. Theron's lip curled slightly. "Such sentimentality can often lead to weakness, Alpha. The natural order, it is there for a reason." His gaze lingered on Elara once more, a blatant dismissal of her presence. Elara's heart sank at Theron's words, the ingrained awareness of her low status echoing his disapproval. But then, Kaelen's hand found hers beneath the table, his touch a silent reassurance, a powerful affirmation of her worth in his eyes. Kaelen turned to Theron, his gaze unwavering. "My understanding of strength, Alpha Theron, differs from yours. True strength lies not in rigid adherence to outdated notions, but in recognizing the value in every heart, in every soul within our pack." His gaze flickered to Elara, a silent message of defiance against Theron's prejudice. The tension in the grand hall was palpable, the unspoken conflict between tradition and a burgeoning new understanding hanging heavy in the air. Elara's heart swelled with a mixture of fear and a profound sense of gratitude for Kaelen's unwavering defense. Later that evening, Kaelen found Elara in the quiet solitude of the library, her brow furrowed with worry. "Do not let Theron's words trouble you, Elara," he murmured, his hand gently cupping her cheek. "His views are relics of a bygone era. But many within our own pack, they share those views, Kaelen," Elara replied softly, the ingrained doubts resurfacing. Kaelen's gaze held hers, his intense blue eyes filled with a fierce determination. "Then we will show them a different way, Elara. We will show them the true meaning of strength, of unity, of love that transcends outdated boundaries." His words were a powerful promise, a declaration of a future where their connection would not be a source of shame, but a testament to a love that defied tradition. And in that moment, standing together in the quiet sanctuary of the library, Elara knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within her soul, that their journey had just begun. The forgotten Omega and the Alpha who finally saw her were ready to rewrite the story of the Shadowclaw Pack, one courageous step, one loving embrace, at a time. The weight of Alpha Theron's disapproval, though unsettling, served only to strengthen the burgeoning bond between Kaelen and Elara. Kaelen's unwavering defense of her, his resolute belief in her worth, resonated deeply within Elara, nurturing a fragile hope for a future she had once deemed impossible. The whispers within the Shadowclaw Pack persisted, a low hum of curiosity and apprehension, but now they were often met with Kaelen's quiet but firm assertions of Elara's value, slowly chipping away at the ingrained prejudices. One sun-drenched morning, Kaelen sought Elara out in the heart of the blooming gardens, the air alive with the sweet perfume of 1,000 blossoms. His intense blue eyes, when they found hers, held a warmth that chased away any lingering shadows of doubt. "Elara," he murmured, his voice a low caress that seemed to blend with the gentle buzzing of bees. He reached for her hand, his touch sending a familiar shiver of anticipation through her. "Come with me. There is something I wish to show you." Intrigued, Elara placed her hand in his, the strength of his grip a silent reassurance. He led her through winding paths, deeper into the secluded heart of the gardens, until they reached a hidden grove bathed in dappled sunlight. In the center stood an ancient, gnarled oak, its branches reaching towards the sky like protective arms. At its base, a carpet of vibrant wildflowers bloomed in a riot of color. "This place," Elara breathed, her gaze sweeping over the tranquil scene. "It is breathtaking." A soft smile touched Kaelen's lips. "It is a place of quiet strength, Elara. A place where the ancient heart of our territory beats strong. And it is here that I wish to speak to you of my heart." Elara's own heart began to pound against her ribs, a frantic echo of the anticipation that filled the air. She turned to face him, her gaze searching his intense blue eyes. Kaelen took both of her hands in his gaze unwavering. "Elara, from the moment my eyes truly saw you, not just as a member of my household, but as the woman you are, my world shifted. Your quiet strength, your unwavering kindness, the gentle wisdom that shines within you, these are not the qualities of someone lowly, Elara. They are the qualities of someone extraordinary." His words, spoken with such profound sincerity, were like a balm to Elara's soul. The ingrained feelings of insignificance began to crumble under the weight of his heartfelt declaration. "Kaelen," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. He gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs softly stroking her cheeks. "Elara, I fought this. I told myself it was wrong, that the traditions of our pack forbade such a connection. But my heart, my wolf, they refused to be silenced. They recognized what my mind was too blind to see." His gaze deepened, the intensity now laced with a raw, undeniable love. Elara, I love you. Not as my Omega, not as a servant, but as the woman who has quietly stolen my heart, the woman who has shown me the true meaning of strength and compassion. A wave of emotion, so powerful it almost overwhelmed her, washed over Elara. Years of unspoken longing, of secret dreams, seemed to coalesce in that single, breathtaking moment. Kaelen, she repeated, her voice thick with emotion. I love you too. A low groan escaped Kaelen's lips as he finally closed the distance between them, his kiss a tender claiming, a merging of two souls who had found solace and love in the most unexpected of places. Elara's arms wound around his neck, her fingers tangling in his dark hair, her own heart overflowing with a joy she had never dared to imagine. The world around them seemed to fade away, the only reality the feel of his strong arms around her, the taste of him on her lips, the undeniable connection that bound them together. It was a kiss that spoke of a love that had blossomed in the shadows, now finally brought into the radiant light. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, Kaelen's intense blue eyes held a possessive warmth, a fierce tenderness that mirrored the depth of his feelings. Elara, he murmured, his forehead resting against hers. This is real. This is our truth. In the days that followed, Kaelen's actions spoke louder than any words. He openly sought Elara's company, his touch possessive but gentle, his gaze filled with an undeniable love. He defied the subtle disapproval of some within the pack, his unwavering devotion to Elara a silent testament to the depth of his feelings. He began to integrate Elara more fully into the life of the pack, seeking her insights during council meetings, acknowledging her wisdom in matters of healing and diplomacy. Slowly, hesitantly, the attitudes within the Shadowclaw Pack began to shift. They saw the genuine affection between their Alpha and the quiet Omega, the strength and wisdom that Elara possessed, qualities that had long been overlooked. One evening, under the silvery glow of the full moon, Kaelen led Elara back to the hidden grove, the place where he had first declared his love. He knelt before her, his intense blue eyes filled with a love that stole her breath. In his hands, he held a delicate circlet woven from the luminous moon petal blossoms, their soft glow illuminating his earnest face. Elara, he began, his voice thick with emotion. You are the quiet strength of my heart, the gentle light of my soul. Will you be my Luna? Will you stand by my side, not as a servant, but as my equal, my love, my life? Tears streamed down Elara's face, tears of pure, unadulterated joy. The forgotten Omega, once relegated to the shadows, was being offered a place of honor, a love that defied all expectations. Yes, Kaelen, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Yes, with all my heart. Kaelen gently placed the moon petal circlet upon her head, its soft glow a radiant symbol of their love. He rose and gathered her into his arms, his kiss a tender promise of a shared future. The wedding of Alpha Kaelen and Elara was a celebration unlike any the Shadowclaw Pack had ever witnessed. Wildflowers adorned the ancient trees, their vibrant colors mirroring the joy that filled the air. Pack members, their initial apprehension replaced by a genuine warmth and acceptance, gathered to witness the union of their powerful Alpha and the quiet Omega who had captured his heart. As Elara stood beside Kaelen, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, she looked out at the faces of her pack, their gazes filled with a newfound respect and affection. Lyra stood nearby, her gentle eyes shining with tears of happiness. Kaelen's hand clasped hers, his intense blue eyes filled with a love that mirrored her own. In that moment, Elara knew that their love had not only defied tradition but had also begun to heal the long-held prejudices within their pack. Their life together was one of deep connection and unwavering love. Kaelen cherished Elara's quiet strength, her gentle wisdom, and her unwavering compassion. He sought her counsel, valued her insights, and loved her fiercely, openly defying any lingering disapproval. Elara, in turn, blossomed under Kaelen's love and unwavering support. Her quiet confidence grew, her gentle spirit finding a voice within the pack. She stood by his side, a true Luna, her wisdom and compassion guiding their pack with a gentle but firm hand. Their love story became a legend within the Shadowclaw territory, a testament to the power of a love that transcended boundaries, a reminder that true strength lies not in status or tradition, but in the quiet courage of the heart. The forgotten Omega had found her Alpha, and in doing so, had shown their pack the true meaning of love, acceptance, and a happily ever after that burned brighter than any preconceived notion. Their love, once a secret whisper in the shadows, now echoed through the heart of the Shadowclaw Pack, a radiant beacon of hope and a testament to the enduring power of a love that truly sees. Years spun into a tapestry woven with shared laughter, quiet understanding, and the unwavering strength of their bond. Kaelen, now a seasoned alpha, ruled the Shadowclaw Pack with a wisdom tempered by Elara's gentle counsel. She stood beside him, his Luna, her quiet strength a steady anchor in the often turbulent waters of pack leadership. The initial whispers of disapproval had long since faded, replaced by a deep respect and affection for the Luna who had captured their alpha's heart and brought a new era of understanding to their pack. One crisp evening, after a long day of mediating a border dispute with a neighboring territory, Kaelen returned to their private chambers, the scent of pine and the lingering scent of the forest clinging to his fur. He found Elara by the hearth, the soft glow of the firelight illuminating the gentle curve of her cheek as she read from an ancient herbal tome. A familiar warmth bloomed in his chest at the sight of her, a love that had only deepened with the passage of time. He moved quietly, his powerful form a silent presence in the room, until he knelt beside her, his hand gently resting on her knee. Elara looked up, her soft brown eyes meeting his, a familiar spark of affection igniting between them. "Long day?" she murmured, her fingers tracing the lines of worry etched around his eyes. Kaelen leaned into her touch, the weariness of the day momentarily forgotten in her presence. "The Ironclaw Alpha remains, stubborn." He sighed softly. "But returning to you, it always eases the burden." Elara's hand moved to cup his cheek, her touch tender. "You carry so much, Kaelen." He turned his face into her palm, his lips brushing against her skin. "And you, my Luna, are my strength. Your quiet wisdom, it guides me more than you know." A soft smile touched Elara's lips. "We guide each other, Kaelen." The comfortable silence that settled between them was filled with an unspoken language, a deep understanding that transcended words. But beneath the surface of their shared peace, a familiar current of desire began to stir. Kaelen's gaze lingered on Elara's lips, a primal longing flickering in his intense blue eyes. "Elara," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that held a familiar heat. "The firelight, it becomes you." A faint blush warmed Elara's cheeks, her own gaze drawn to his lips. The years had only deepened the magnetic pull between them, the unspoken yearning that still simmered beneath the surface of their daily lives. "And you, my Alpha," she replied softly, her hand now tracing the strong line of his jaw. "You carry the scent of the wild, it always stirs something within me." Kaelen's hand tightened on hers, his gaze intensifying. "That something, Elara, does it still burn?" Elara's breath hitched, her own desire mirroring the raw hunger in his eyes. "It burns, Kaelen. Always." He leaned closer, his lips a breath away from hers. "And mine for you, my Luna, it has only grown stronger with each passing moon." The herbal tome slipped from Elara's fingers, landing softly on the fur rug. Her arms rose to twine around Kaelen's neck, her body leaning into his. The weariness of the day, the burdens of leadership, all faded into insignificance as their lips finally met, a familiar conflagration of love and desire igniting between them. It was a kiss that spoke of a deep, abiding love, a connection that had weathered every storm, and a desire that still burned with the fierce intensity of their first stolen moments in the moonlit garden. The Alpha and his Luna, their hearts forever entwined, their desire an eternal flame in the heart of the Shadowclaw Pack.